to join the Zoom session if you want. If you have a hard time seeing any of the screens, you shouldn't in here, right? Because we got 4 of them, it's kind of overkill. But you can use that school desktop to log into the session, and if you have a laptop or whatever works for you. I'm assuming that everybody out in the Zoom world can hear me okay? Is this a fair assumption?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yep.
Yep.
And I do see a few people out there that I already know, and welcome back from last semester. For Zoom people, I'm going to pull the Zoom screen over really quick here as we start out. And like I say, I always hate looking at myself on the screen when I'm talking, but you do get used to it, believe it or not. Just try not to look anywhere except at my face, basically. But I have my Zoom set up on my machine so that when I record, you can actually see the Zoom components. That's not a default, by the way. Just to show you guys a couple of basic controls in the Zoom session that might be helpful for you. I often will be sharing my screen and recording, and I'm going to start doing that right now. So, okay, I guess I already was doing it, but I'm not seeing the green highlight around the edges, which is kind of throwing me a little bit. But I want to go through some of the controls at the bottom. For the most part, when we're in a Zoom session, people at home, I do prefer that your microphones are muted. There are audio filters built into the Zoom settings that you can filter out a lot of background noise, but it can be really disorienting for us here in the classroom, because when your mics are on, sometimes the speakers are really loud and it kind of like knocks us off our seat, literally. Also, if you start to hear feedback happen when you unmute your microphone, consider just either popping on some headphones or just bringing the volume down, or maybe use the chat feature instead of the microphone if you're getting a feedback loop. There are some settings here with the microphones. If you see these little up arrows that you can hit, and you can select different inputs. And you can see, like on my system here, because I'm plugged into a bunch of different things, I have a bunch of different input and output for audio. When I'm at home and I'm plugged into my rig, you know, I like to call it, I have even more, and it gets really complicated. So like when you fire up Zoom, just because your audio is coming out of like your speakers at home doesn't mean that Zoom's going to do the same thing. And if it's not, you're not hearing yourself, or if it's not picking up your voice, I recommend that you come in here and sometimes, you know, switching from one and back to the thing that you're using turns it on. Just a tip. With the camera, you know, I don't force people to turn their cameras on, although once in a while it doesn't hurt. You know, if you have a respectable background and you're dressed and, you know, whatever, your room is nice and clean, you know, feel free if you have the bandwidth. Not an obligation. I know that for many of you, you have like a reality in the background. Like when I'm teaching at home, I'm teaching from my basement workshop, and I have like a plastic tablecloth I bought from the dollar store, literally for $1, green, and I like have it like clipped to the ceiling of the basement as my green screen so that I can like put up these virtual backgrounds. So I'm not sitting in front of a pond right now, folks. This is my actual background here. And let me just, I'm clicking on the wrong thing. Sorry. Let me just turn that off for a sec. So this is my actual background, and now you can see like what a mess I am, you know, because the other thing with Zoom is, I don't know if you guys picked this up, it actually does some filtering, and there's controls in there that can, like, you know, minimize your wrinkles and your lighting and all sorts of really cool features. You can also turn on these goofy little effects and stuff, like I can add eyebrows to that. Probably, I don't need that, but you can do those like really weird goofy effects. Often if you're at home and you don't want people to see your background, you can just do the blur. That's a pretty good one. So you can still see that there's stuff going on here, but it tries to just pick you up. But then you can use the virtual backgrounds and you can load your own photographs. So like every once in a while, you know, hey, I will transport myself to Detroit, you know, so here I am in Detroit, or wherever. So the virtual backgrounds can be kind of fun. My favorite one though is this one. We'll see if you guys can pick up what this comes from.
Oh, that's not a hill. Right.
Yeah, and notice this is a video, not a still. Yeah. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this, but after a while, you know, those of you that are fans of this content will know it is in about 3 or 4 seconds here. Let's see who blurts it out first. All right. Anybody?
Oh, it's Monty Python.
Yeah, Monty
I know
Python,
what
there
that
you go.
is.
All right, that's my favorite one to use, but
Get that reference?
probably the least professional. So here, let's go to the Milwaukee Lakefront. That's probably a little bit better. So if you guys want to turn your cameras on, especially when we do introductions and stuff, I would appreciate that. And we will be doing that in a little bit. The other thing that is important in Zoom sessions is this chat window. So when you click this little chat, it brings up this box. And if I'm like, and this will be often, I'm just talking away and talking and talking, you got a question, type it in the chat because I'm not stopping, and then I'll see it in there and I'll answer, right? Or if you have a question, like the equivalent of raising your hand in the session, there's buttons for that too. So this reactions button down here at the bottom, you can click on it and you can like clap or give me a check mark or a thumbs up or whatever, right? The other real popular one is raise hand. So for example, I can raise my hand, it moves you to the top of my Zoom window and I see that you have a question, right? So that's a way to interact with me. From time to time, I may also ask you guys to share your screens, right? So like even here in the classroom. So one of the other reasons why I use this tool in the classroom is to broadcast to all the stations, but also for the stations to broadcast back to the main session and out to the people online, right? So like if you did something really cool or you have a question or a problem, we can broadcast it and work on it all together. Some of the other stuff is pretty self-explanatory, but those are probably the key features. Zoom also allows me, if you give me permission, to remote control your machine, right? So like if you ever call me for extra help, and you're just not clicking on the right thing and I can't describe it well enough to you, I can take control of your mouse and keyboard and do it for you, right? So that's kind of a neat feature. Also the recording aspect. Right now we're recording and this is a little bit weird. But normally what I do when I record these sessions, and I will record in increments, by the way, is I will upload these to YouTube the following day and then publish them back to the course shop. Right? Sometimes I make them private, sometimes they're public. It depends on the content or if people's names and images are in the screen. But if it's like generic lecture or demonstration content, it goes out on YouTube publicly. So,
old lectures there?
I'm sorry?
Like, what's the oldest lecture you have there?
Oh, I don't know, probably like, I don't know, good question. Probably 7, 8, 10 years ago. Yeah, if you look. And yeah, I do have a whole library of them out there. And you can subscribe to my channel if you wish, but you don't have to.
Like Harvard has some, like all like universities have like a good amount of different times.
Yeah, a lot of us, and this is kind of a little bit different type of class because we are sort of virtual and sort of hands-on in this class. But when I teach my programming classes, coding classes mostly, and we're very screen-based, I mean, almost everything I do gets recorded. Right? And all right, so let's move on and talk about the course shell here. You guys noticed that just before we started, I had clicked my edit mode on and off, and right now this is what you guys are all seeing when you land on the course inside of Blackboard. And I just want to make sure everybody's into Blackboard. Okay, everybody's able to access the course, no problems? All right, no issues. Zoom people also? I assume you're all good? I see no hands or no chats. All right, that's fantastic. I do have my standard kind of content here. I do kind of put my course shells together a little bit differently than most. For example, I actually create a homepage, and then all my main content for the course is directly accessible from that homepage. Right now, you'll see that I have 2 unit folders of instruction posted. As we proceed, additional units will pop up. I am going to start with the syllabus formally. So if you guys want, let's go over here to the left sidebar and click on this link that says Syllabus Calendar and Instructor Information. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and open this up as a document. So it's here as a PDF. I do on occasion, and this is kind of weird, but I get some people that print them, right, still. That might be you. Or you can save it, or it's in the course shell. So either way you want to proceed. This course is called Network Security. it directly aligns with the Security Plus certification content that's out there for IT professionals. So there's actually a certification exam that you can sit and take when you finish this class, if you wish. You have to pay for it. I would recommend additional study, whenever you do a certification exam, and you can earn a certification that's kind of on par with like an A+ certification or a CCNA or something like that. We do get students that on occasion are interested in doing that. There are industry segments in IT that do value those, right? So a lot of, for example, all of our IT techs here on campus, casuals and the full-time employees, all have to pass their A+ certification in order to work here, in the support department. When I started in IT, that wasn't even a thing. It was just starting to be a thing. That's how old I am. But it was seen as a valuable certification. And in many cases, sometimes a simple certification can lead to a job, because that's enough to open the door and let you in, depending on what the company is looking for. So something to consider in the long run. We are in the spring semester of 2023. I see one typo already on my syllabus, and I apologize, so I will have to do some corrections. Is anybody spotting it? Yeah, the dates are wrong. We are here today on, this should say January 17th, end date of April 18th. Those are the start and end dates. So I will correct those. I can't do that in the PDF version here. This course is delivered in a combination of formats. So we have two sections linked together. So I think we're full up. I think we're all the way up to 20 students total, which is a lot. So the face-to-face blended, which is the 2 hours here in the classroom, and then online synchronous, which are the Zoom people. I do want to let all of you know that a blended format extends to both sections, meaning normally this class would meet 4 hours per week. We cut it down to 2. 2 hours will be on your own online doing some of the materials. Generally for me, for the way I teach classes, I don't like to be really lecture heavy. I like to be activity heavy. So if you guys are really good about going through the course materials, the readings basically, and all the materials that will be provided online and through the book, then we can come to class and we can focus on the activities, the doing part of it. If you guys ever happen to get into a coding class with me, I do that completely in that fashion. I never lecture in my coding classes. It's all canned in videos, and then we come to class and we code, so you don't have to listen to me talk all day. We just code. And I'm hoping that this class runs the same way. Some of that is kind of determined by the size of the class. We do have a lot of people here, so that kind of sometimes slows down our progress a little bit. But the one thing I will also tell you, we're here from 7:50 to 9:50 every night, or every Tuesday night. I do plan on using all of that time, because when you think about, normally it's a 4-hour class, I'm trying to squeeze in all that stuff into 2 hours. For those of you that are here for the class before, great, we might be able to get rolling on a couple things early. And any of you that get here normally, the other class should end at 7:30, and at that point you can just come into the classroom afterwards. So for Zoom people, I'm going to put the same thing out there. My previous class ends at 7:30. I like to have at least a 5-minute break to get a drink of water, go to the bathroom, but we can get rolling early if people show up early. But I will try to use every single minute. You want to get your money's worth is kind of my approach to it. All right. The course description and competencies are listed here. So this is the official thing that we're supposed to teach to as instructors, and what you're supposed to be learning here. I don't want you to feel intimidated by the name of this course. This is a first semester course. Some of the content gets kind of deep, but we don't go that deep, So we learn a lot about a lot of different things that introduce you to the field of both networking, security, really IT as a general field, right? The IoT class that some of you are taking before this is kind of the same, but this focuses more on the networking security aspect. This is, I would say, a critical course for cyber people. And for a lot of the cyber people, correct me if I'm wrong, this is not a first semester class for you, it's later in the program, is that correct? Or is that networking?
Yeah.
Networking has it later in the program.
No, it's for cybersecurity, it's not doing cybersecurity. This is my second semester.
Second semester, okay. Well, it's fairly early in the program. Yes, sir.
This is my first semester cybersecurity.
So you, okay.
Yeah, I
All right,
think
well-
it's because I was there for one of the other ones.
I think the rule was you just had to complete the CCNA level 1 course, I think it was, or take it concurrently with it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any prerequisites for this course, if I remember correctly. But either way, it's a cool course. We do a lot of really fun stuff in here, and these are the things that we're supposed to learn, what you're seeing on screen right now. We do have a required book, and I do want to talk about this a little bit, because if you look at this inside of My Gateway, you'll see that you have two different options for purchasing. And I know some of you have already gone to the bookstore, picked the hard copy up off the shelf, and paid the 200 whatever dollars for it. And it's a bitter pill to swallow, and I'm sorry if you did that. The unfortunate thing in the IT field, and I'll tell you guys what, 200 bucks is a lot for a book, but I have a couple of books in our programming classes that get up to 300-400 bucks. And when I was working on my undergraduate degrees, I had books that were even more expensive, and this was 20 years ago. And that's an unfortunate part. So if you're looking to save a little bit of money and you haven't purchased the book yet, you can buy an electronic copy or rent an electronic copy, but make sure that you do have what we call Mind Tap access, right? And it's an electronic access code so that you can access all the virtual labs that are built into the book. We will tend to do all of our lab work in reality, but for online students, so Zoom people in particular, you're not here in the classroom touching the equipment. You can do some of those labs in the virtual environment where they have pre-built virtual machines online that you can log into and do the same thing that we're doing on the desktops here physically. So that's kind of a neat feature. The other option is, of course, you can work on your own equipment instead of using the virtual labs. But let's go back to this book thing. I'm going to go over to My Gateway real quick here, and I know most of you should be familiar with this. Those of you that are new, this is kind of our main portal to get the stuff. Now, I'm doing an instructor version, so yours probably looks different, and then I customize my stuff and move it all around. I will be real frank, as a web person, I hate My Gateway, the way they changed it. It looked a lot different a long time ago, and really I never used it, but this is my only choice now. I'm going to go in and I'm going to search for this particular course. So just give me a second here to pull up the course, if you don't mind. And normally this is how we get our book information. We'll find my section here, 3CM1 and 3WY1. And when you click into the course and you go to the bookstore information, this is the official listing from the bookstore. Right. And notice they actually have two listings here. So the regular book, which is this CompTIA book, 7th edition, is $213 to buy. And I see that the basically don't have a rent option for that book straight up. If you look online, you don't have to buy it from the Gateway Bookstore, and you guys should know this. If you can get a better price somewhere else, get a better price somewhere else. But get the book, right? We do need it almost immediately, but that Mind Tap access is important. So if you ever find a used copy and the code's like scratched off and already used, then you don't get access to that stuff. That's kind of the catch. Now, a better option for some of you, especially if you have multiple classes in IT that are using Cengage books, is to get this Cengage Unlimited thing, and it gives you access to all of the Cengage IT books. And notice, it's cheaper than buying the book, but you don't own it. So at the end of the semester, it goes away.
And that one, because that's the one I got, annual size mind track.
Yeah, it includes the Mind Tap. You got to make sure you get that part of it too, right? And I think that's probably the better option for most of you, right? Now, the flip side of this is, and I'm an IT guy, and it's taken me a really long time to convert from going from paper books to electronic books. And I'll tell you why. And I do use a lot of electronic books now because I hate lugging real books around. But I would always pick up a physical book, and a physical book, even a really thick one, I can like put my thumb on it and flip through the pages super quick and get the stuff way faster than I could ever search it on an ebook, right? So I'm like, when they make an ebook that can operate as quick as a physical book, and plus there's just something more comforting about reading a real book. It's just a thing I know I'm old, so you guys are like, what are you talking about? Reading on screen is fine, all right, until your battery runs out or, somebody kicks the cord or the internet dies. All right, so just kind of keep all that in mind. But if you want a recommendation, I would go with the Cengage Unlimited if you haven't bought the book yet, right? If you have, oh well, done deal. Keep that on your radar for next semester, though. Try to find out what book your class uses in advance, and if this is an option, especially if you have like more than one course with Cengage books, and in networking and cyber, that can be the case.
I think people should wait, because I didn't know about that you prefer that, so I read the email, and for different classes I have, I had one for like math, and one time it showed that I had to buy one, but then the email said, nope, we have it on Blackboard. So I think people should wait a little bit just to see what the teacher says.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know what, that's really kind of the key. You should always find out what your instructor is wanting, because for example, like if you come into some of my programming classes, sometimes it really doesn't matter if you have the book right away, but sometimes you have to have it the first day, so it can vary course by course. But for us, these are the books, and notice the ISBN numbers on these as well. All right, I'm going to go back over to the syllabus. In terms of how we do our grading and stuff in this class, and that's always a big question that people have. This is kind of my percentage breakdown for the assignments in this class. I do not use weighted grading in this class. By the way, folks, for the IoT class I do, but for network security I don't. So basically there's, I think about 680 or 700 points, somewhere in that range for this course. And when I get to either midterms or the final, what I do is I take the total points you've earned, divide by the total points possible, come up with a percentage, and then I compare that percentage with our grading scale to give you your grade. When we do get to midterm grading, which is the beginning of March, please keep in mind midterm grades don't count. They don't become part of your permanent record. They're just an indicator of how you're doing right now, right? And hopefully that's an A. I have seen circumstances, although they're rare, where somebody's failing at midterm but gets an A at the end. That's really rare. And usually it's a pretty good indicator of where you're at. The one thing that is really critical in the IT programs, I mentioned it in the previous class, is because these classes are part of your degree, you are required to get a C or higher in the course in order for it to count towards your degree. This is not true for gen ed courses, by the way. So if you're doing like psychology or English or whatever, you can squeak by with a D or a C minus, right? It's not great, but you can squeak by with those. But in the degree program, if you get a C minus, it doesn't count. You have to take the course again, right? If you're ever in that situation, I do try to kind of work with you to find a way to make it okay. I do have some late work policies, and in this class they're a little bit more standard in line with what I normally do in a class. So for any assignment that I have in the class, the way that you know the due date for it for sure is to click on the assignment itself, the point value comes up and the due date comes up and a time goes with it. Most often they're set for midnight, right? The practical thing I told my earlier class is, all right, I'm not sitting there at 12:01 a.m. waiting for your assignments to come in to grade them, right? So if you turn it in a little bit late, it doesn't really matter so much. A few hours, half a day, it doesn't matter so much. I won't count it as late. But try to get it in by the due date. I also have a technique when I do assignments. So for example, next week we're gonna have work due, but it's not due before the class starts or at the end of class or that night. It's due 2 days after. So my logic is you can come to class, ask questions, get help, still have a little bit of time to work on it and turn it in and not be late. Now, if you're in the situation where whatever is going on in your life and the work's gonna be late, if you turn in something that's partially complete, I'll give you another week to work on it with no late penalty. I just wanna see it working on it, right? If it is late, and you don't turn in something partial, then the points will start to deduct a little bit. So there's kind of built into the rubrics in this course shell, you know, if it's a little bit late, we deduct a little bit, and the point values start coming down. When we get past 2 weeks late, then the most you're going to earn is half the points. Now, I do want to say all this up front, that I'm not an instructor that when the due date passes, I turn off the assignment. Some instructors do that, right? And that's kind of a harsh grading policy in my opinion, but everybody teaches a different way. That's not my philosophy. I will always leave all the assignments turned on. But if you're getting into the habit where everything is late or you're not doing the work, we need to examine why and find a different strategy for you. You know, what I've seen, and this is kind of a weird thing to talk about, is we've kind of gone through this era with the pandemic and people, especially coming out of high school, and my kids were in this situation too, where they were in high school and are on Zoom and or whatever, and they kind of really didn't have to do homework. I mean, they did, but kind of like, if they didn't, it was like, whatever, you passed the test, you're fine, right? I just want to let you guys know up front, that's not how these classes operate. Most of your grade is based functionally on the assignments that you do, not your tests. So if you don't do the assignments, you're not going to pass. There's just no way to pass, right? So don't make the assumption, and I did have one student do this to me just a few semesters ago, didn't turn in any homework, showed up to every class, took the midterm exam, got an A, and was upset that they didn't get an A for midterm. And I'm like, that's not how this works. You know, if I wasn't your employer and you came to work every day and you didn't do anything, but then you did one task and it was stellar, well, I'm probably going to fire you and you're not going to get paid, you know? So one of the reasons why we do have assignments in these classes is because we're training you to go into the workforce, right? Employers like people that show up and do things, you know, to make the business operate. So I mean, it's helpful, you know, if you're running a business to actually do stuff. The absolute drop dead date on this course, of course, is going to be April 18th. See, the dates are correct down here, which is good. But nothing will be accepted past April 18th. Right? I usually will post grades within 48 hours of that date. That's my time frame, but most normally by noon the next day they're posted, if all goes according to plan. If you guys want to drop the course, you have until February 1st. If you choose to withdraw, you have till the end of March, basically. And all of you are required to be here by next week's class session in order to not automatically be dropped from the course. So that's, the census date is really more for financial aid purposes than anything, but you have to show up at least once during the first 2 weeks. I also have a drop period after the 1st of February where I can drop you if you're not showing up. Midterm grades will post after March 3rd. Now in this class, I do have a rough calendar here. I have a more detailed listing of points and assignments in the course shell, which I'll show you in a little bit. You can see that we have a lot of material to cover in this class. There's 14 chapters in the book. We're covering 13 of them. We're going to start tonight. You know, so unlike the other class where we did a tour and we did introductions and we played with the magic stick, that's not going to happen in this class. We're going to start doing stuff, and you might even get a little bit of lecture, just so we can get all the material squeezed in. This is what I call the rough calendar, so it just shows you week by week what chapter we're covering and what work is essentially due, without the due dates or point values. Like I said, in the course shell itself, I have a detailed listing of the point values and everything and the actual due dates. Right. Have some basic policies here, but you know, generally speaking, I do most of the grading in this course based off of a rubric. That's not my typical grading style, right? So when I teach my coding classes, I do not use rubrics at all because it's all judgment call. But because this course is from the networking department and I don't author their courses, I follow their technique and they do everything by rubric. So what a rubric means is there's a, you know, did you turn it in on time? Did you do it correctly? Did you submit it correctly? And they all have a little scale. And if you know, tick the right marks, you can get all the points. Generally speaking, if you turn it in on time, do it correctly, follow instructions, you get all your points. It's kind of a no-brainer. And in fact, once you learn how to do that, you get all the points every time, right? On time is a really big aspect of that, by the way. If I do see that you have issues with your homework, I sometimes, like, hey, you messed up this one part. I will sometimes do this. I'll give you kind of a lower score, but I'll say, resubmit it, fix it, and I'll give you all the points. So that, watch for that in your grading comments. The last little link here on the page links out to the student handbook. So if you guys want to know all the college policies, in the old days, they used to print them all here on the syllabus. It was like pages and pages of stuff. I'm like, well, this is all in the handbook. They finally got wise and just put in a link. But if you guys want to know the college policies on whatever, follow that link and it's all in there. Some of you should probably have a physical copy. I don't know if they make physical copies of the student handbook anymore, but it's out there. All right, that covers the syllabus. And what I'd like you guys to do next, and this is the same thing we did earlier in the evening, is there's a link here to go to the syllabus acknowledgement, or you can just go right to the discussion board link here on the left sidebar. And then find the syllabus acknowledgement discussion board. And then click inside there, and you'll see right up here at the top, it says create thread. It's really hard to tell it's a button. I have kind of an issue with it from a design standpoint as a web person, right? And what you do is click create thread, and then you can type whatever you want in the subject, like syllabus. And then down here in the text box, just type, I have received syllabus, etc., whatever. In the previous class, I made a little joke. I said, I have read the syllabus, I understand, and I will obey. Joke. My informal comment on this is, if you do not acknowledge the syllabus, I will not grade any of your work. So if you're like, I don't see any grades on my stuff, I'm like, did you acknowledge the syllabus? Right. So hopefully all of you will get that done here today. But next thing I'd like to do is kind of do a really quick look at some of the core shell components. This core shell is maybe slightly more complicated than my standard approach to doing core shells. And what I mean by that is each one of the unit folders that we are going to be going into has multiple layers to it. And the reason that we set it up this way, and this is the networking people that designed it, is because it mimics the book content that we're using. So the book is like split into sections, and then there's chapters that are bundled together in those sections, and it follows that structure. So just like the book, just like the core shell. Generally speaking, all of the unit folders are going to appear on the home page. And then I'll click into unit 1 here so you can see what I'm talking about. You'll go in, and then you'll notice that our first 2 chapters of content are in here. And I do have a list of the deliverables that are required for that particular chapter. And then as you go into each chapter, really what you're going to have here are links to the work that you're going to do, right? I don't really have a lot of functional content in here aside from the PowerPoint at the top, because the content is in the book, right? So I expect that you're going to be reading the chapter, and since if you guys are doing it electronically, all that material is electronically available and on screen at the same time. That's why I'm a really big fan of like ebooks for these networking courses, because it really syncs up pretty well. And I think there's a pretty good aspect to it. Typically for a particular chapter, so you'll notice that for chapter 1, we have three things that we have to do. We have a case project and then 2 smaller projects. And then we also have these optional weekly check-ins. And I want to state this up front, the weekly check-ins are not required, right? But if for some reason you struggled with something or you had a hard time, or hey, you just want to earn a couple extra points because they're extra credit, do this, and then it's helpful to me. And frankly, you'll notice that a lot of them is like, what did you like about this? What was difficult? What was hard? What could I improve, etc. That helps me the next time I teach the course. You know, I look at that information and read it. You get a couple extra credit points for the time that you spent doing it. It's not required though. The other assignments are required, right? The other thing that I'll note here, and because I'm inheriting this course shell, so the IoT class that preceded this one and the network security class have both gone through revision since the last time I've taught them. So what that means to me is I'm rebuilding all the content, right? So normally I have my whole course like pre-built the day it starts. This one's not the case. So I will be kind of adding stuff as we go. So if you're looking and you think some things are missing, that's the why. I think I got this one pretty well, better than the IoT one. But here's my my point about checking due dates. With any of these assignments, if you click on the title, you will notice the due date. And this one, I think maybe is actually incorrect, so I might have to adjust this one. But it says next Tuesday at midnight, and there's 10 points attached to it. So it tells you the date and time, it reiterates the assignment instructions, and then, you know, notice that this one says, please answer all questions, and it's basically a one-page paper. Now, you could do this a couple of different ways. I don't say, give me a Word document or Google Doc or anything like that. You could do either one of those, right? Or if you wish, and in some cases, if it's just questions like this, you can use this Write Submission button, which brings up a rich text editor, and you can just type up your stuff right here. If you're not quite done with it as you're typing it, I want you to notice down here in the corner, there's also a draft, save draft button. So you got like 2 of them done, but you don't have time to finish it. So you hit save draft and come back and continue. If you ever look at your grade book and you see a blue circle in your grade book, that means you never took it out of draft mode, and hit submit, by the way. And then I'll send you an email and go, hey, you got a blue circle, you're in draft mode, turn it in, right? Once you have an assignment turned in, right, you hit submit, you'll go to your grade book, and now the grade book appears kind of in a weird linear fashion, I think. I think it's a little hard to read. But the points that are possible appear right here. I know that's a little small, I'll zoom in. And then the points that you earn will appear next to it. So ideally, if it's a 10-point assignment, you get 10 out of 10. Often when I'm grading stuff, particularly if there are issues, right? So like you messed something up, or you did something wrong, or whatever, I want you to fix something, you're gonna see a little like bubble pop up that's indicative that you've got a comment on your assignment. You wanna click that and read it. Don't ignore it, because if it's there, it's because, you know, I took the time to write it. If you got like 10 out of 10 and there's no little bubble pop up, you're golden. Just move on, right? Sometimes if you did a really exceptional job, I'll take the time to type nice job, or, you know, great work, or something like that. That's usually pretty rare. It's usually negative comments that you get. And don't think of them as negative, think of them as constructive. You know, try to, you know, spin it to the positive. You will notice here too that they have rubrics attached to them, so you can actually see the mechanism that I use to do the grading. And I think this is pretty helpful, right? So for example, like, okay, this is a discussion board kind of thing. You know, so is your formatting good? You know, did you write complete sentences and not misspell stuff? Do you have good information, or is it on time? And either you're doing it or not doing it, and then that determines your points. And what I do from the grading side is I actually, you know, have a little interface like this, and I click the right buttons, and it calculates your score. So that it's helpful to know what you're being graded on, you know, and it lets you pay more attention to it. When you look at the project ones, these are a little bit more robust, I'll call them, right? So, you know, like the lab activities that we do, which hopefully we get to one tonight, you know, like what level are you performing at? Okay, novice, well, you get none of the points. You know, if you do really well, you get a certain amount of the points, and it adds up to the percentage of the total of the grade. And hopefully you nail it and get all the points, right? I don't want you to feel intimidated by this, because I also, as an instructor from time to time, I use the rubric and go, I don't think that's the right score, and I override it and put in the score I think is correct. right? Like, okay, really, it's somewhere in between one of these. And so I just kind of make a judgment call and give you the points. So that happens as well. Right. But this is where you come to check your grades, you know, especially for those of you that are new. And you can see, yeah, there's a lot of assignments in here, right? Don't freak out. It's like the last thing you want to do is look at how much stuff you have to do during the semester before you even start doing it, because it's like the biggest turnoff. But I assure you that all of them are doable and you are all capable of succeeding at it. I would like to jump back now to Unit 0 for just a moment and talk about some kind of like introductory thing. So Unit 0, we talked about this in the IoT class. So all IoT people are disallowed from answering this question. And Becky, you too, I think. I'm trying to see if who else in there has had me in class before. Why do I start with Unit 0? In Zoom, people, feel free to unmute if you want. Okay, I have one in the classroom. Your name, sir? Andrew. Okay, and Kevin chiming in too. Andrew, you responded first, so.
I'm gonna guess binary. 0, 1.
Yeah, well, he's guessing binary. Okay, well, right, in the binary number system, there's only 2 numbers, 1 and 0, right? All right, Kevin, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say it's an intro and kind of sets the stage.
Yeah, I mean, right, well, from a practical standpoint, Kevin, you're right. I mean, it does kind of set the stage. There's no real activity or assignments in here technically, right? But from a functional IT standpoint, the reason I do that is to kind of drive home a point, right? Computers start counting not at the number 1, but at the number 0. And what I explained to the previous class is in a base 10 number system, there's 10 single-digit numbers. The first one is 0. So in coding classes in particular, you know, whenever you start with numbers, it's always 0. The computer starts counting at 0. Humans count, you know, starting at 1, because that's just what we learned. Technically not correct though, right? So it's always something you have to accommodate when you're working in IT. I have a little bit of a welcome message here and a couple links to the syllabus acknowledgement and the introduction. I do encourage, especially people on Zoom, that you do the introduction thing. And one thing that you might want to consider putting into the introduction, for example, is maybe a little, whatever you're willing to share. You don't have to give your life story. You know, some people like share too much and put pictures in there and stuff. Other people are like, you know, I like trains or something like that. Keep it really simple, but it's also a way to connect with people. So if you're interested in maybe collaborating with others or maybe sharing contact information, you don't have to share your cell phone number or anything like that, but maybe school email or something like that. If you want to get with people and study together or connect, I'm just putting it out there. The other thing that you're going to see in the course shell as we kind of proceed, as I start to do recordings, I'll start adding these little video things, and I usually throw my icon in there too so you can spot them. So by tomorrow, probably at some point, the video I'm recording right now as I speak will appear right in this spot that will link up to YouTube. The reason I like putting them on YouTube is a couple reasons. I know a lot of other instructors use like Panopto and other like goofy tools, but YouTube, let's face it, folks, is the best video streaming platform, right? And it automatically closed captions. And I'm always impressed how well it does with like acronyms and complicated computer terms, especially like with me, and you know, English is not my first language. You know, you guys wouldn't know that from hearing me talk, but I didn't learn English until I was like almost 6 years old. I spoke Greek, you know, even though I lived here in the States. That's what I learned, you know. So it picks up my voice pretty well and it converts it. So I dig it, you know, so that's why I use it. Sometimes I make those videos private, so only we can see them, and sometimes they are public. And feel free to subscribe. Get your book right away, right? We go back to where we started, right, which was this required hardware and software thing. At some point, we probably won't do it this week, but next week is actually potential that we would do this. I will show you how to get a Windows 10 or 11 license key for the education version of Windows. So what I told the earlier class is most of us, when we go as consumers to buy a computer, you know, whether it's online or wherever, you're getting Windows 10 home, right? If you're a business or a corporate client, you can order professional, right? Most people don't want to pay for it, so they don't even know why they're getting it in the first place. But as IT students, where we do want to work on the higher level of the Windows platform, having the education version basically gives you all the capabilities of the enterprise or super professional versions of Windows. Those include virtualization, encryption, remote desktop, and probably a half dozen other things that I'm forgetting. But those are the key tools. For me, remote desktop alone is worth the price of admission. If you guys aren't familiar with that tool, that's a tool where I can take my version of Windows here, and I will probably demonstrate this during this semester, and I can remote control a different computer, right? And the real goofy thing is I do this at home all the time. Like I'll have this as my primary machine, and I have a few other PCs on my desk, and instead of like hooking up the keyboard and the mouse and the monitor, or having a switch, I just remote into the system that's sitting right next to me and run it here, right? Or I can do the same thing across the internet and remote control my home computer. Like, oh, I forgot to do something on my home computer. I can log in and whatever. So that's kind of one reason to have it.
And you download that on both computers and everything?
Well, no. The one that's connecting from has to have remote desktop. The receiving computer can actually be Windows Home. I think it's kind of an interesting. It's a really cool feature. So really all you need, and what's neat about this is all you need is the license key to unlock it. When you buy Windows Home, it already has all the other versions on there. You just put in the license key, it goes through like a 5-10 minute process, and boom, you got Windows Education. Right? And it's free, and the license key does not expire, by the way. You get to carry that with you. So one of the benefits of being a student. We will talk about that moving forward. But once again, we go back to this hardware thing. I do recommend that you have at least this functional minimum for equipment. But from all practicality's sake, I would say 16 gigs for RAM if you're buying a machine new. At a minimum, if you can afford to go up to like 32, I would do that. It is a really big difference when you're doing heavy duty work. I also recommend a minimum 500 gig hard drive, but a terabyte I would say is better, and an SSD is strongly recommended, without a doubt, for all the reasons we talked about before. And then something that's capable of virtualization. Usually you have to get up to like the $700, $800, $900 range before you get that on a Windows PC. If you're buying a Mac, it's already doing it. So we get this question, PC or Mac? Okay, networking, cyber, CSS, well heck, all of IT. Windows is really kind of the platform where most of the work is done. All right, from a consumer standpoint, and then from somebody who does a lot of creative and development work web-wise, I really do prefer the Mac platform in a lot of ways. So I do both, but I also have Linux machines and also, little Raspberry Pis and Arduinos and I have all sorts of stuff that I use. I think it's really important as IT people. I mean, for the most part, I know a lot of IT professionals are like, man, why are you messing with Macs? They cost so much, they're not worth it. I can get a PC with twice the features for half the price. But here's my tip to you guys. Every Mac that I've owned, I've kept operating for a minimum of 10 years before I swapped it out. Right now on my desk, I have a Mac Mini from 2010 that still works great.
And they keep like security on it?
Well, the OS is kind of capped at a certain level because it's so old. But Macs are inherently more secure just because of the underlying operating system, which is basically a Unix operating system underneath. So you take it for what it's worth, and I'm not trying to push it towards a platform, but there's a little bit of a you get what you pay for. With PCs, most of the PCs that I've owned, especially laptops, 4, 5, 6 years, and they're just falling apart, right? A few exceptions. Mac though, I mean, every Mac that I've owned, at 10 years minimum, I got out of it. And then like my Mac G4 I bought in 1999 for like $2,000. In 2012, when I sold it off, I got $300 for the monitor, $200 for the CPU. 12, all those years later. I think that's really impressive, you know. Yeah, so I think functionally though, for the most of you, a Windows PC is much more practical.
So that would be more like personal, you said?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that you can do on those platforms too, right? But some of the things that we do in our program require Windows hardware in order to run. What a lot of Macintosh people will do is they'll run virtual machines on top of there, or they just dual boot the machine. So Macintoshes, you can load Windows and just boot into Windows instead of Mac OS if you wish. You can't do that with a PC. Mac OS will not run on a PC. Well, there's what we call Hackintosh, but that's kind of out there. But generally speaking, you cannot run a Mac OS on a PC without a lot of shenanigans. But you can do the converse, which is interesting. I do have this prediction though, for any of you that are kind of in the know. Microsoft has slowly been sneaking into the Windows operating system, what they call Windows subsystem for Linux, which means they're building in Linux components right into the machine. And I have this wild prediction, and you're kind of nodding with me here. I have this prediction that Windows will move to a Linux kernel within 10 years or less. So Linux has won, is basically kind of the thing. All right. One aspect of getting into the electronic aspects of this course is the service that we call MindTap. That's that extra piece that comes with your book. There's a little document here that talks about how to access your MindTap course. Now, the way that you can do this is, you can follow the document. So I encourage you to pull up the document and read it. I really don't want to exactly do that to you. But you can use a link here. So if you notice and see, this document does not have the correct URL in it. You'll have to replace that piece with this code. You guys catching this? Or, and I'm just putting it out there, if you notice the root URL in that document, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can catch this, is Cengage. You just go to cengage.com. And you can go in there. Now, the first time you jump in, you'll have to kind of, if you don't have an account in there, you have to establish your account, get your password set up and all that stuff. I'm going to show you really quick. And in fact, I'm just going to go to Cengage and I'm going to sign in with my account. And this is email based. Now, those of you in the IoT class, do you guys notice that there's like some similarities between the Cengage login and the Cisco login? Yeah, because they're basically functionally using the same systems. But once you do get in, and I realize that all of you are probably like going to be trying this out right now, what I will do is I will correct that URL and I'll post it back into Blackboard here in just a minute. You will be able to access basically your course inside of here, which I have added you guys to. So let me go ahead and just bring this up on the screen just so it loads up. But I'm going to go back into the course shell if you guys want to just bear with me here a minute while I do the adjustment. So I'll go into this document, pull the URL, which I already had open, so I just double downloaded it. All right, so you guys get to watch me edit my Blackboard shell here, and this is actually going to be on YouTube too, so this should be pretty interesting. But I will edit my entry. I'm just going to paste in the link and this change the code. Heck, let's make it all bold. Let's turn it into link. All right, so you can actually now, in Unit 0, if you refresh your page, and it should be for everybody, it should be available, you should be able to click that link and go in there and get signed in. And if you guys could try that now, I'd appreciate it. Because that way, if you are having issues, we can try to figure out what the issue might be. If for some reason we can't figure this out tonight, we can always talk after class, and I don't mean tonight, but like tomorrow or the next day or whatever, via Zoom or email, and figure it out. But this is going to be pretty important in terms of course content. So one aspect is you have the physical book, but the other aspect is you get all the resources from MindTap. So MindTap is basically an online service that goes with Cengage courses that in some cases allows you to do online virtual labs and gives you all the information in kind of a handy format. When you take a strictly online version of the course, I'm saying this once again, because I have people in the classroom and I have people online, you do have the option to do the lab work inside the virtual environment entirely, especially if you don't have equipment. So why this is appealing is like if you do have a low level laptop, right, that doesn't have enough RAM, you might be able to do the labs inside the MindTap environment. So it's worthy of trying it. You know what I mean? So before we, cast it to the wind or throw it in the lake or something, because nothing is more frustrating than when you have really slow equipment trying to do really advanced stuff with IT. Every time I do go shopping, and I always like kind of joke about this, my wife is always on my case too. She's like, "Do you really need a computer that costs that much?" I'm like, "Yes, honey. I'm a professional." And I kind of equate it to like if you were a carpenter, right? Would you buy like the dollar store hammer, or would you go get $100 Stanley hammer with a fiberglass handle and et cetera, right? You get the good hammer, or better yet, you buy a battery powered pneumatic nailer and not mess around. You know what I mean? You get the gear that makes the job easier, and there's a reason for it. Professionals use high-end gear because it makes them work faster. And when you're a high-paid professional and you can work faster, you make more money. Right? And that's something you should really think about. All right. How are you guys doing with the logins? Zoom people, if you guys are able to log in and get connected, you could do a thumbs up or something like that in the Zoom window. If you're not, I guess you could do a thumbs down. How about classroom people? Are you guys able to get in? I see a couple of you are in there. Right. Okay. I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna pause the recording as I step away here for a sec. Okay, I didn't mention this part of it. If you guys look at the document, right? So here I am downloading it a third time, right? That's okay. I'll delete all that stuff later, right? Your temp.
The stuff that we download.
I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
The stuff that we download, like the PDF, should delete that.
That's up to you. Like if you do it on the school computer you're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh no, that will reset after 10 o'clock tonight. It'll reboot and I'll delete. I thought they had a temporary password. What password did you guys use to get in? Was it provided for you?
You have to make your own personal one.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, I'm gonna pause the recording again, you guys, and Zoom people, I will be right back and stepping away. Okay, so my recording was paused, so I'm unpausing the recording and resuming. I did suggest while the recording was paused that you guys try the pre and post assessment quizzes, by the way. But the way that they've arranged this book content, you notice it's broken into 5 parts. I will have 5 unit folders that match those 5 parts in the course shell. Each one of those parts will cover multiple chapters. So here you'll see module 1 and 2. I have those, I think I call them chapters in the course shell that match up in the course shell. Right? So your technique for going through the content, especially if you're doing it through MindTap here, which is strongly recommended in addition to the reading, is you can actually read through the content. So I want you guys to do that by next week. So get into, okay, I've been logged out. And you know why that happened? Because I was trying to log in as a student. So let me back out and log back in. And I'll try to go right back to that. So it's fun to watch your instructor fumble, right? But it also shows you that, hey, you should just roll with it. Chances are you can fix it anyhow. Nothing like that? Ashley, I will help you figure it out. All right. All right, so once you guys actually get in here and start to be able to see the content, this is where you can get into the material and kind of start going through. So it's basically, in many ways, kind of an electronic version of all the projects. Now, these projects are also listed in the book. It does not preclude you reading the book content, though. So you want to go ahead and you read the chapter in the book, and then you come in here and you start doing some of the labs. So the labs, you know, this isn't very time consuming. A lot of these go pretty quick. You know, so the ideal is you've read the book content first, and then you come in here and start working on the labs. With some of these, I will do them in class. Not all of them, right? But some of them go so quickly, it's silly not to. In some cases, we'll just talk about them, but I do expect you guys to work through them. So they for example, give you a URL, right? In fact, let's just go ahead and open that URL so you can look at it. Yeah. This is kind of interesting. So these are the biggest data breaches and hacks, and like who's like way up at the top here? Like who's got the biggest bubble?
Facebook. Yeah, multiple.
Right, and that's because they've been hacked in so many different ways. And I'm sure if any of you guys use Facebook, you've gotten like, hey, this person's requesting to be my friend, but they're already my friend, you know, kind of thing. Or, you know, whatever, people do all sorts of bogus stuff on there. But this is kind of a, you know, what we call almost like a heat map. And then you can hover over these and get, you know, pieces of information. Now that relates to this thing, right? So they tell you how to do it. So they give you a step-by-step, you know, as you do the project, right? And then you complete it. The other project that's in here that's kind of interesting is they have you do a scan for malware. And I don't know if you guys ever do this manually on your computers anymore. Like who runs real antivirus anymore on their computers? Okay. Okay. They kind of have the same policy here at Gateway, right? And long story short, us IT instructors can't operate that way, you know, because most users here on campus, they get the campus equipment, you can't install software on it. Why? Because they don't want you like installing your like games on a work computer or, you know, whatever. But IT instructors, we have to demonstrate how to install software all the time. So how do you do that on a machine where you can't install software? Yeah, that's one way to do it. But what we do is IT instructors have unlocked machines. So we have, because, you know, we have unlocked machines. So we don't have the same machines that everybody else has. And also, you know, I don't even mess with the school equipment. I always use mine. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Another project, and this is the one that we're gonna start to toy with here in a little bit, is we're gonna create what we call a sandbox, you know, environment to compute in that you guys might find really useful. You probably have never even done this type of thing before, with the exception of maybe one of you in the room, I'm guessing. But this is the one that I do like to kind of get started on tonight, because it can be a little bit complicated. So I want to go through some of the steps of this. I will demonstrate to you many of the aspects of this, but chances are we'll probably have to spill this over into next week, looking at where we are time-wise. Here's what I want to do right now. I'm going to pause the recording, and I want to take a 5-minute break because we've been going pretty like nonstop for a while. Just get up, walk around, go to the bathroom, get a drink, whatever, and then we'll come back and we'll start working on this. All right, I'll see you guys in 5. All right, that will end this video. I'm going to do a fresh video to do the Project 1.5 lab. So I'll see you in that video.